When I was hired initially, I was a virtually unknown quantity because, as I indicated, I started teaching part-time. But then as I continued to teach, I'd say after 5 years, then the full-time position became open, then I was able to get involved more. I think part of the difficulty was that there was prejudice and discrimination within the district, and because I was the first African American hired full-time, for a while the only African American on campus, then I experienced some of those things. But it's really interesting because some of the people I was involved with, some of the older faculty members, I literally, it's funny when I think about it. I literally had to tell them that they were too old to mess with me, a young, spry person coming out of college from Stanford University, and they should choose another topic, another target to direct their discrimination. Because I knew I was going to outlast them, if not outperform them, and I did both. And now you ask about what's the difference. I think the difference at that point, there were very few individuals who warmed up to me personally. But now it seems though, because of the hard work that I've engendered, because of I think I have a reputation of being fair and hardworking, concerned about the students, that's paid off, to the point that I think the changes that I've been able to make in the district have been more subtle than anything else, to make people think that their hearts got better or they came up with the idea, as opposed to using more of a direct approach. And I think it's changed quite a bit. Now all of those people are gone for the most part. They've either retired or something else happened to them. The college has changed. For me, it's changed from a standpoint that is more personal now. It's not as impersonal when I first started, because people knew me, but I didn't know them because I was only one person, that one African American person. But now it seems as though there's more diversity on campus. There are more people who know that that's the right thing to do. I think we've become a better college as a result of those kinds of changes. But like with anything else, as you grow and you become larger, it becomes more impersonal. So that's happened on the grand scale. But I still think on a personal, interpersonal level, that we still relate to one another as faculty members, and we're concerned about one another's welfare. Maybe we don't get together as much as we did before, but we're much larger now. There are more pressures, there are more expectations. So even though I think Saddleback is one of the best community colleges in the state, there are other things that we could do to actually have more of that interpersonal relationship. But as a rule, I recognize that doesn't happen as much in a bureaucracy. And when I came, we were smaller, we were more local community. Now everybody seems throughout the state knows about Saddleback. We're no longer the best kept secret. So,
over 36 years, obviously a lot of things happen that are interesting. I think I figured out I almost died at least 3 times during the process. And one of those times actually was on a sort of a positive note. It involved, this was back in, I believe, 1987. And it was about 7-something in the morning, and the Whittier Narrows earthquake hit. And I was working, we were down in the basement of the library at that point, and I was working with a couple of students that morning. I was news director, and I had 2 student assistants with me. And I was just outside the studio, and when the earthquake hit, one of the students, who was quite large, came bursting out of the door and nearly crushed my head against the table. The fun part of that story is when he finally regained his composure, he figured out, he was the first news person to figure out that the earthquake actually hit in Whittier. The LA news establishment is very, Hollywood-centric, so, for the first half hour or so after the earthquake hit, they were reporting on damage on Sunset Boulevard and Burbank Boulevard, where the stations were. But he had the wherewithal to figure out that there were a lot of reports of damage in Whittier, and he called the watch commander at Whittier and said, "Hey, do you guys have damage?" He goes, "Oh my gosh, yes, we have, people are dead, we have, collapsed parking structures, but you're the first news person to call." And so he ended up, calling the Associated Press. The station got a big award. That student went on, Jay Lawrence went on to become the Orange County Bureau Chief of KFI. And the other student who was in that morning, a guy named John Quinlan, went on to become a station manager of a station in Los Angeles. He's now a regional vice president for Clear Channel's traffic and news operation. And his wife actually is now on faculty here at Saddleback College in the business department. So that was a lot of fun. That sort of kind of wraps up sort of the things that have gone on at KSBR. We have a very strong community service component, a very legitimate news operation. At the same time, we are training students who go on to do some really special things. In the early days, when we were in the library, a lot of things were sort of makeshift. And there was one time, this is probably back in 1982 or early on, somebody made the mistake, not on our staff, of pointing a screwdriver into the electrical panel and blew out all of the electrical system in the library. And this was before they had a backup generator. So they had rented a generator, and this was also before we were able to automate. So we actually had to have somebody in the station overnight. And I was in the station with another staff person, and it was around 10 o'clock at night, but we were just feeling really, really sleepy and just about to doze off in there. And thought, well, maybe we should walk out and get some fresh air. And as we walked out the back door, we realized the back door had been propped open with the generator, and the generator exhaust was pointing in the back door. And so, yeah, that was kind of a bad thing. Now, thankfully, they are a lot more sophisticated about the power systems. And in fact, as they are now building the brand new studios in the basement of what is now the LRC, they actually have a dual redundant air conditioning system just for the new studios. It's all hooked into a really big generator that automatically kicks in when we have power failures. So hopefully at least that kind of an issue doesn't happen again. One of the interesting things about the position and one of the big changes, well, many of the big changes that took place were technological. While kind of the art of radio and TV stay the same, the language, the tools changed radically. I mean, we're in a TV studio with cameras that are relatively small that actually may have lenses that are bigger than the cameras themselves. Back when I started, the cameras were big enough really to be anchors for the tall ships. With full sails, they could have thrown them overboard and stopped one of those ships in an instant because they were so big and heavy. On the radio side, back in those days, we were playing music off of albums and off of cartridges, and that evolved to CDs, and now just about everything is played off of computers. Although it's sort of reverting back, and some people are playing albums again. I think part of the change has been, when I feel old, is when I'm teaching and I'm explaining to people what these different media are, and it used to be that you could, explain that what an album was because somebody's parents might have it. Well, even parents don't even have record albums anymore. And you used to be able to explain a cart, yeah, because they're just like, remember the old 8-tracks? And people go, now they go, no, because they don't remember what those are. So those kinds of things have changed a lot over the years. But again, the language of radio and TV has stayed about the same. The challenges that have been presented have been, I think, in terms of the students coming into the program have a different view of the media because they consume it in a much different way than we did when we were growing up. It's not quite as exciting for them anymore to be a DJ because it's very easy for a student on their own to curate their own mix on their computer. It's not magical to do that anymore. They can curate their own playlist and share it with friends, so people can go on Pandora or Spotify and share their playlists with other people. So they don't have to go on the radio to do that anymore. The challenge in terms of programming the stations is much the same in that, again, the students who are coming in consume the media in a completely different way. We teach, broadcast journalism, but right now the main audience for traditional television news on the low end is 45 years old. I mean, people under 45 don't regularly watch television news anymore. And so in some ways, we're trying to teach something to people who really have no concept of what they're being taught. We sort of have to explain, well, this is a creature that's still out there because there is still an audience for it, even though you're not the audience. And that's repeated across the media. So part of the challenge now, and that's the exciting part, and I think part of what I will miss, is working in that transitional period, working in this time of great change and facing the challenge of how do you continue to teach students the importance of getting the information right, processing information in a 24-hour news cycle. When people can be tweeting instantly something that is happening or think is happening, where do you start working in things like analysis and making sense of what all of these tweets are doing, and how do you sort through all of those to figure out what's right and what's wrong and what's accurate and what's not, and that was really getting to be fun, but those are the challenges that future journalism professors here and across the country are facing.
Probably the last 6 years that I was at Saddleback College as a full-timer, that year I was asked to take over the coordination of the matriculation program. Our matriculation coordinator had gotten a dean's position in another college district, and there was a void there, so they were trying to fill that void. And I jokingly tell my dean, Geraldine Kuhlman, that when she was asking for the counselors if anyone would step up and take that over until they could hire someone permanently in the position, that I must have looked up because everyone else was looking down. And so I got picked for that. But for about 5 years, I was the matriculation coordinator. And as is the case today, matriculation statewide had a lot of changes going on. And it's hard to set up a program when there's so much change all the time. There's a lot of work for the staff, but I had a fantastic group of people working with me in matriculation that made my job so much easier. These were people, I call them the dream team, because they would come in and the state would give us a regulation or something that we needed to add. And we said, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to present it to the students? And they would say, well, we can't do that. That's impossible. We can't do that. And I would say, I know you can. And they were the kind of people that they come back the next day and they've worked out a way to do it. So what do you think if we do it this way? And that was, like I said, the best type of people to work with, because students, when it comes to testing, they're already have a little bit of concern and a little bit of hesitation about wanting to test. And with matriculation, students would have to come in and they would have to do the testing in English, math, and reading. They would also have to do an orientation, and they would also have to do the advisement session. So one of the things we did do, we were able to put the orientation and the advisement online. Mm-hmm. So we worked with a consultant and set up a way to do that, where students would just be able to go online and get those two things done, and that only left them with having to come on site to do the testing. And that was another one of the areas that that dream team was able. They worked on along with counselors. We had a committee set to say, how do we go to set up this orientation and also the advisement session online. Mm-hmm. And we were, as throughout the state, they used us as one of the models on how to do that, and looked at our orientation. I must say, before then, the counselors were doing a fantastic job of doing orientation on campus, where the students would do their assessment and then they would come in for almost a 2.5-hour session with the counselor in a group format. And like high school, these were right out of high school, and like most high school students do, you're going to lose them after so long. And so we knew that we were losing and we needed to come up with another way to do it that was going to hold their attention a little bit more. And they're all into technology and anything that's audio, visual type thing. So it worked out really well that we were able to do that. One of the things that I would like to see happen at Saddleback College, with over the 30 years that I worked at Saddleback College in counseling programs, and I always get that mixed up, counseling services and special programs, I was the only African American. And it just seems to me that we needed to hire at least another African American. There are qualified people out there. I know that because when I was recruiting, it seems like we were recruiting, but they were going to Orange Coast and Fullerton and Cypress and LA. They were interviewing here, but they were not getting hired. And so I would like to see us do something different. Right now, there are not in student services, there is not one full-time faculty African American. And that's one area I think we've neglected. Because what happens is that when students come on our campus, they're looking for people that look like them. It makes them feel like they're welcome. And we don't have that anymore. Not that I'm not the only one, but we're the first line. When students pick their classes, they may have an African American instructor in political science or in chemistry or in some of the other, it used to be English. So we don't even have that many on campus anymore. And we're losing that. And I think along with that, our African American population at Saddleback College is also dwindling. And if we were to do anything that would assist us in staying multicultural, that's one of the areas that sure, this is South Orange County. We know that we're only like, I think, 3% in the whole county. But it would be nice because other students, it brings a wealth in the classroom. When I'm teaching and I have a broad range of students and we're discussing issues, it's nice to have different perspectives. And so that's what I would hate for us to lose all of our African American students. And I think a way to retain that is to have more African American faculty. Yes.
Well, I had an anthropology class, and I mentioned monkeys and apes are different creatures. Physically, humans are much closer genetically to apes than they are to monkeys. Monkeys have tails, apes don't. And I didn't realize one of my students worked in an animal rental agency. They rented animals to TV productions, movies and things. Without me knowing it, she brought in a spider monkey, they're about that big, with a long tail. And spider monkeys have a tail that's called prehensile, means they can grasp and hold onto a tree limb or something, hang by it actually. And she showed that. She put her fingers out and the monkey held up that. And then she had a baby chimp, it was about a year old, and very cute, it loved the attention. So the students not only got to see a monkey as being different from an ape, they got to touch them and the animals responded. And I was in seventh heaven. I never got a word in for a whole hour, you know, the students interacting with the animals and this animal trainer. About 4 or 5 days later, I got a call from the administration, and they were panicked because their lawyers had informed them we're not supposed to have live animals in the classroom that they could bite or whatever. And I explained these were very young and very harmless, and they like people. No, can't do that. So the following year, when it came that time to tell the difference, I went to a costume rental place and rented a gorilla costume and came in dressed as a gorilla costume. And one of the faculty members didn't know who was in the gorilla costume, stopped me in the hallway. I said, "Who are you?" And I pulled out my Saddleback College card that showed I was a faculty member. "Holston?" I said, "Yes, thank you." The students loved it. I had a lot of really good students, and it's such a pleasure to think that I may have made an impact on some of them. Mark Cook was, he was unsure as to what he wanted to do in life, and I spent a lot of time talking on office hours with Mark, not necessarily about the class, but about his family and what he wanted to do in life. He went on, finished university, finished medical school, is in the medical profession now. Kevin Fagan drew cartoons, funny ones, for the school newspaper. And I told him, I said, you have real talent, you should do this for a living. And he was very nervous about that. And I said, no, seriously, send this stuff. And I looked it up, and King Features, I sent it to King Features. So he sent samples of his work to King Features, and they rejected it. And he was all despondent. And I said, well, I think your stuff is super. Send it to Charles Schulz, who draws the Peanuts cartoon. And he did. Student actually took my advice for once. He sent it to Charles Schulz. Schulz was really excited. He was franchised with King Features. He contacted King Features and got Kevin a job. And Kevin's cartoon, Drabble, is still in major newspapers all over the United States, which pleases me. He does take little digs at me from time to time. My wife and I both taught, but we also had two food service businesses, frozen yogurt over in Laguna Niguel. And he, in the Drabble cartoon, he'll have his characters going into a yogurt shop from time to time and getting yogurt. Sitting outside today and waiting for my turn here, Charlie Myers came up. And of course, he looks different now for all these years. He was a student of mine back in 1982, and he said, when I took your class, my father had told me I either go to college or go in the military. And that rung a bell with me because my dad told me, you're a worthless beach bum, because I surfed all the time when I came out of high school. He said, you either go in the military or you go to college. And I went to college and made a difference. And he said, I took your U.S. history class and I liked it, so I took your anthropology class and I took your California history class. And I'm trying to remember because I had, I think, about 18,000 students because of the large classes here. And he said, I got A's in all your classes, and I went to USC, and I graduated and got my graduate degree, and now I'm a professor here at Saddleback. And I said, what? You know, and it actually brought tears to my eyes. You know, you wonder whether you make a difference sometimes. And to find you did, that really is rewarding, very rewarding.